Hello everyone, we are here for another celebration video. In this part, we are celebrating the birthday of our friend Daniel Garner from OG Rose. So OG Rose is a pen name that Michelle and Daniel used together. The birthday of Daniel is the end of February. We all belong to this community space, online space, where we produce material and we exercise community building, experiment with community building. I thought this kind of activity could be an aspect where occasionally we pick a person and we celebrate and find an excuse, because a birthday is really an excuse for us to express something that you would want to express anyways. And this would be a catalyst or a trigger. And I'm very happy to be doing this with Cadell Last and Javier Rivera. The viewers of my channel are probably more familiar with Javier. We have collaborated before. Javier's YouTube channel is The Dating Theory, where he talks about, he does a lot of personal reflections, bringing in philosophy, psychoanalysis. And the recent reading group on Sufism is a really nice new adventure addition. And Cadell Last embodies the, really a teacher figure, teacher, scholar, somebody who's doing scholarship, but while he's doing that, he's sharing, creating, and teaching. I will leave a link to the relatively new philosophy portal where you can find his courses and other information. So welcome to my two friends. Say a few words. So some general introductory remarks. Then our plan is to talk a little bit about one of Daniel's works to express our appreciation and celebration. Javier, please.
Well, happy birthday, Daniel. I like Davood, I'm going to echo this idea of celebration and birthdays. I thought for the longest time, a birthday was like only for myself. But it's weird because I just had a birthday not too long ago. I actually experienced someone's excitement over my birthday. They're like, oh, I'm so, they wanted to take me out and they wanted to do something. And I realized that, even though I was kind of like, I'm not sure if I want to do that, but there was something in that, realization though, that I was like, there's something about this birthday that is always kind of self-reflecting back to the other person, which is funny because I always like it when it's other people's birthdays, because I'm like, yeah, we can celebrate. We have an excuse to celebrate. And that's when I realized that, when people want to do something for my birthday, I kind of take it like, okay, there is something there that really brings community together that way. And I know we will be talking about this soon, but I'll pass it over to Cadell.
Well, thank you, Javier. Thank you, Davood, for bringing me on. And happy birthday to Daniel Garner. Daniel Garner is a fantastic, just absolutely enlightening, charismatic, beautiful individual. We're absolutely blown away to have him as a part of our group. And Davood, thank you so much for bringing me on. And your channel is fantastic. And Javier, your channel is also fantastic. And everyone is fantastic. But of course, we're here to talk about this tension between the restriction of the individual and the freedom of the individual, and the role in which that could be played in with birthdays. Is birthday for the individual? Is it for the community? Is it for the community and the individual at the same time? And how do we build character? How do we build character in this tension between the individual and the community? And do I really want to be here? It's okay. So that was my Daniel Garner impression. Happy birthday, Daniel. And I'm happy to be here. And I'm excited to talk about belonging again.
Yeah, that was really great. It was uncanny. I almost felt like Daniel was here as you were doing that. Which, we can maybe say a few things about that. I was really struck when I met. One of the things that I was really struck by in Daniel, his style, his demeanor. He's very responsive. if you say something slightly funny, he's going to, in my case, he's always entertained me and like laughed out of kindness, maybe not because I said something funny. Whenever I had something like an insight or resembling an insight, he always, he reacts like, "Oh wow, that's a great point." So there's a kindness, there's a generosity, and in his style, and that is quite rare. Internet is a very cold place. Social media is very cold and indifferent. It is the indifference of the places like YouTube is immense. So it is really refreshing and surprising to meet individuals that have an open heart and greet you with that openness. So did we all, for this discussion, did we all pick the same piece, belonging again? Okay.
I did. Belonging. I focused on belonging again. Yeah, and I just want to. I just echo your sentiment that. I mean, I think that something I've said before about the opening of Lacan's Écrits, about that style is in some. He emphasizes that style is more important oftentimes than content,
mm-hmm.
And this relationship between style and content. And I think with someone like Daniel Garner, what's so interesting about his presence in this space is that he does carry with him this incredibly jovial, incredibly warm, incredibly personable and relatable style, which is, I don't think it's necessarily something that, like, again, it's like there's always this problem with mimicry, and like we always have to like find our own style. But I think what it invites into me and my reflection is just deeper thoughts about style and the way in which really what a community is different styles of people, and it takes different styles of people to create something very interesting. And I think that I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, Javier talks about birthday being like something he perceived to be his own. Like, my birthday is mine. I do what I want to do on my birthday. But if you show up, or if you think in the context of a community of people who would be upset if you spend your birthday on your own. There are, when I was growing up, that was the case sometimes, at least. If people knew you're gonna be alone, they would feel hurt. So there's an aspect of showing up that has responsibility in it, and that has like, you're paying your debt even on your own birthday. You have to like kind of bow down to the expectations of the community. So hopefully we will create some of that, but not too much burden for each other. Something else I'd like to observe, and maybe together we can reflect on it a little bit, is Daniel is one of the few people I know online who really has tied very strongly his thinking to writing. So everything that I know, he's spending considerable amount of time reading or thinking about, he always translates that into writing. And we've talked about books we have read in the past, and he says, "Oh, I don't remember much because I never wrote anything about that book." So for him, writing and thinking are inseparable, which is like, to me, I don't write myself. I don't write about everything I think about. To me, that exercise of tying those two together is like those basketball players who practice with extra weight on their shoes. So they wear shoes that are extra heavy, so when they jump or when they run, it demands more from them. At the same time, it grounds them and organizes them in a different way. So writing, if you always expect yourself or demand from yourself that everything I'm thinking about, I'm going to write a piece on it and publicly share, maybe, that brings in a structure into speech. I think that is, again, we can observe that in the way Daniel talks. He is very comfortable going through a series of points while not losing organization. Whereas, like for me, it happens a lot where I want to say 4 things about it, and by the time I get to the second point, I forget what I was talking about because the limitations of short-term memory. All right, so belonging again. Who would like to go first.
I'll take, you know, this aspect of belonging again, couldn't be more, you know, necessary. And what I like about all the videos that Daniel put about belonging again is that every single time you think like there's a solution, he goes, yeah, but you know, if you do that, then this happens. and if we accept this, then this happens. What I love about this series that he's doing is that he's really bringing into focus and blurring the lines of, well, what is the exact solution and what is the exact direction? But the very paradox of doing that is that it automatically kind of gives us a direction, right? By him kind of doing these moments of like, well, that's not going to work if we just do this, and that's also not going to work if we just do this. So we start with this kind. He starts putting like these sort of like little blinders on after he points it out to you, saying that this doesn't work if we just focus on this, and this is not going to work if we just focus on this. One of my favorite parts was that stuck out to me was when he was talking about tolerance, right? That this idea, and I actually feel like a lot of our version of peace is actually just tolerance. Like, you know, I'm just going to tolerate you. So we're just going to agree to disagree, and we're just going to tolerate each other, right? I love that Daniel pointed this out because it really shows how there is no love in that agreement whatsoever. Like, it's just to agree and that's why I also feel like whatever notion of peace we have today isn't really peace. It's just simple, emotionless tolerance. So I feel like, you know, for me, this is what stood out the most. And it gave me a lot of thought about what does this mean? Because he also brings up about this idea of like empathy, that, you know, what is it? It's funny because a lot of people would say, well, with tolerance, I am protecting difference. No, you're not. You are protecting difference in such a superficial film that it almost just does like this. It just like, I could just do this and it just comes off. So you want something sticky. And he did talk about like religion to some extent, about like you need something that sticks. And it's funny because when Cadell brought up about style, I was thinking about harmony. Harmony, it's funny because harmony does give a style, but you have to put notes in agreement. But it's weird. I think of harmony like a sort of love tension. It's weird. I don't think of harmony like, oh, we'll just get along. I think of harmony more like a sort of tension of just like, I love you so much, but I can't consume you, because if I do, then I don't have you. So I need to have like this tension of, and it's, again, it's more than tolerance. So it's like, I accept all these differences, but you know, I'm gonna stop talking from there. I'm gonna pass it on.
Yeah, well, I totally agree with you on your point on emphasizing that tolerance is a sort of pseudo mechanism for cultivating real difference. And I think it emerges in sort of the age which Daniel identifies here in the towards the end of Belonging Again. So towards the end of Belonging Again, he and this is really what I want to focus on, because I think he really gets to some interesting ideas here that hit the mark for me. Like, we live in this age which he calls the Delusion Individual, which is basically the individual that is just, the truth is my yay saying. The truth is my affirmation, you know, my will, you know, the individual will, the individual yes. And what this does is, I think it creates the situation for tolerance, because we all have to tolerate each other's just egotistical yeses, even if they are legitimately antithetical to anything resembling community, or legitimately antithetical to anything that looks like family, or anything bigger than their yeses. And that actually reaches down to the core of my problem with my own family. It reaches down to the core of my own problem with forming intimate relationships. Is one, having some contact with this ideology of yay saying, and also having been exposed to this ideology in a way that literally has life and death consequences for anything outside of individual egotistical motives. And where he comes with that is basically the problem. And I think Daniel handles it super well in regards to this whole narrative. To me, resembles exactly the type of thing that Freud's wrestling with in Civilization and its Discontents, and exactly the same type of things that Freud's wrestling with in The Future of an Illusion, which is the role of prohibition, which is the role of negation, which is the role of, here's the crucial thing, not everything is possible. This is the crucial thing, is there has to be something which is not permissible. And I think that this dimension is where we start to get the intimate unit. This dimension is where we get the family. This dimension is where we get collectives larger than ourselves, is that it's not just your ego's yes. There's something which is shared between us, which is not permissible. And you cross that boundary and you are in some sort of violation of the ethics of something beyond yourself. And I think that negation, that limit, is where we can transition from a therapeutic age, what Daniel calls a therapeutic age, and cultivating a good citizen, which Daniel says is also a model for a healthy person, a healthy subject. Now, what's difficult, I think, is having that conversation of, okay, well, and I think in order to have that conversation, you kind of have to start with the things most close to the intimate partner relationship, which then builds a family potentially, is what do we have in common that's our common boundary, our common no? And you might have a space where oftentimes that is implicit, but it needs to be made, I think there needs to be a dynamic relationship between the explicit and the implicit. And you need to have some sort of relationship between that, which is the foundation for a healthy relationship, a foundation for I'm going to end there really, but what I want to emphasize towards the end of Belonging Again, which really stuck with me, is if you don't do this, if you have no prohibition, if you have no inclusion of this into your, and you just have a society of egotistical yeses, then what happens is that the real becomes unbearable, because there's nothing outside of your egotistical yesing. And the real, as what Daniel defines following Lacan as the difficulty of human reality itself, or things not working, start to become so overwhelming that you just, you'd spiral into the mental health crisis and the meaning crisis. And that's where we are. So I think that's where I'll end. But I really appreciated this on Belonging Again. And
yeah. That also resonated with me, the theme of not everything is possible, and the common no's that we need to have, the common prohibitions, the very old-fashioned feature of communities. There are certain things that are prohibited. There are certain things that are off limits. When dealing with family members, we regularly come to these points where arguments become difficult, and at the same time, you can't distance yourself and detach and say, okay, I've had enough. Now let's find that stranger's distance between us where we can tolerate each other. If the relationship is already intimate, if you're already dealing with a family member, that is almost impossible, unless maybe the solution is to cut ties with the person, which is too drastic, and then it just eliminates the problem. In intimate relationships, the navigation of the problem, navigation of the negotiating, solving the problem together has to be with the acknowledgement that certain things are not available to me. Certain actions, I cannot perform certain actions. There's certain decisions I cannot I cannot make. And that is very different from the egotistical, egotistical affirmations that, yeah, I can do anything I want with my life. And if I want community, if I want to belong again, sometimes we have this illusion that belonging again or community is something that we can just go and pick from a shelf and all things will remain equal. And we will have this addition, will solve the community crisis or the meaning crisis or the problems of our loneliness. We'll just go and pick it off the shelf. And I think the Belonging Again series that Daniel has been doing really shows that it doesn't work that way. It will not work that way. It's not the thing that we pick off the shelf. There are certain things that we have to let go of for that picking off the shelf to be possible, to even be an option. Another aspect that I really like somewhere in the series, I think it is when he brings in the A.J. Conyers. I think he's a theologian, philosopher. He says that we live in a time where religion, our religious and community commitments are kind of extracurricular niceties because we don't really mean them. We don't mean other than this, in the context of the toleration, sociological structure where we tolerate different beliefs and accept each other with that distance, then we are not really tied to anything because of that. Then we can talk about any religion we want, we can attend any religious rituals, and that attendance, that participation doesn't really demand anything from us, from who we are, from the reality of ourselves. We don't really truly participate in it because we want to remain free agents. And then the other relevant topics there, relevant problems, is that he makes the discussion political. He says, when we do this, when we allow for this condition to persist, we are allowing market forces to govern our lives and state apparatus to also govern our lives. So it is not that we are free, we are just letting go of our community ties to be then governed by these other forces that they are not really respectful to our small communities, smaller belongings. Javier?
Yeah, there's several things. Something that I've been thinking about. I've been trying to rethink like Deleuze and Rousseau a little bit. Mainly, I rethink it through the way people critique Rousseau and Deleuze. And the way that I've been thinking about it is because Cadell makes it a very good point, is that people conflate contact with the truth as knowing the truth. So, for example, if you make a contact with the truth, you can mistake that as your own ego inflation and make that such an affirmation of your own difference, of your own style. And that's kind of like the danger of making contact with the truth. And I think of this like falling in love with somebody. It's true. I mean, and it's funny enough, in the same chapter that I read in Hegel, self-consciousness, right? It's true that my heart is in contact with something, but it is its own self-feeling. But the thing is, it's not my feeling. Something, who is love's subject? That is the funny part about that. And when there's affirmation, who's affirmation's subject? That's what needs to be asked when people, fall into like the Deleuzian traps and Rousseauan traps. Is that really in my opinion, when I think about Rousseau, I think what he's asking is that we've lost contact with truth. But it seems like what has happened is that actually now we've maybe never even lost contact with truth, or maybe we need to go with, I don't know. But anyways, it seems like we made an inflation with contact with truth. And the reason why we need those prohibitions is to kind of chip away at that falsity of telling us that, look, that's not you, and that's not you, and that's not me either. So you need that prohibition, that epistemology, to start throwing the borders down, because it's so easy. I mean, they're not wrong, right? Contact with truth is eternity, it's infinite, it's whatever. But there is limitations because that's not us. Like it is and it isn't, and that's like the danger of all that. So that's why, I agree with Cadell, like we need those prohibitions. And it's very easy. And like he said before too, right? The real can be so overwhelming and overburdening. And it's exactly because of that. Once you make contact with truth, you don't know what you're playing with. You don't know what you're doing. You have nothing. You have no knowledge. So it goes back to even Jung's version of like, what is it? God inflation, right? The moment you can have that God inflation, you can have that God deflation, which will destroy you and annihilate you. So it's not that I'm against Deleuze or Rousseau or anything. It's just that I understand their purpose. The purpose is right. We need to have a contact with the truth. That is undeniable. However, the reason that we need prohibitions and we need lines is that our general no is to protect ourselves from ourselves. And I think Adele pointed it perfectly about, with Daniel saying that the real is what's going to come. And that's what's going to be really overwhelming, and we won't be able to help handle that. So we need to understand that the prohibitions isn't for me to be like, well, I don't like your egotistical mania. No, there is a loving aspect to this that I hope, that is in there. There is a very loving aspect of like, look, if I let you do this, you're going to destroy yourself. You know what I mean? You're going to destroy yourself. And it pains me to see people do that to themselves, and I'll pass it on.
Yeah, I just say there was this new age spiritual friend who I think shared a meme that embodied this idea of, I'm spiritual but not religious, which is very, very common today. And it was a meme where there was a fish in a goldfish bowl, and the goldfish bowl said religion, and then the goldfish bowl was in an ocean, and it was like the fish should jump out of the goldfish bowl into the ocean, which was spirituality. And then I wanted to make an edit to the meme, which showed when the fish jumped out of the goldfish bowl into the ocean, a shark ate it. So like, just that this is like, you jump out of the religious bowl into the spirituality, and then the real comes. But like, this is I think the move here, that basically is where this complex dialectic of being in contact with the truth, which might be the oceanic feeling or the psychedelic feeling of like, I am the whole universe and like I have knowledge of everything, I'm, or that Godflation you were mentioning. But then you have the negativity. There's a shark, right? Or like I had the experience of, I always say, the real is you take a step on the street and a bus hits you. Like, it's just like, comes out of nowhere. And like, this is, I think, this contact with the real and surviving it, of course, in the context of human society. I would link to, I think what Davood said precisely, which is, if we're just in this individualistic, egotistical yes mode, it's not that we don't have any more community ties. It's not that we are just this naive freedom. It's that we allow market and state forces to govern our lives. And the market and state forces are totally devoid of community. So it's not that market and state are bad. It's that market and state have a place, and that place isn't community, and that we can't just let go of community for market and state to take over those functions, or else we're just going to have a huge gap between individualistic life and market and state forces with no intermediary. And community, I think, can be that intermediary. Community can be that intermediary that provides the layers necessary for a healthy economy and a healthy society. So I did this talk I would recommend on the commons with Michel Bowens, where he was talking about the layers of the commons. So one of the layers of the commons is just a type of unconditional love that you get from family. Another, where, when I was a kid, I didn't have to worry about money or where I'm going to get food because there's always food on the table. Another aspect of the commons is this dimension that you're taking control of now, Davood, which is recognizing things like yearly rituals, birthdays, Christmases, doing these types of yearly rituals where you have a community solidarity with other people. And then on top of that, you have a layer of meritocracy, where there's certain rules and responsibilities. So like teachers and students aren't the same thing. They're people on different levels, like a parent and a child aren't the same thing. There's a meritocratic sort of system in place. And then you have market forces. But we're in a situation where we don't have unconditional love. We don't have community recognition. We don't have meritocratic systems. And then we just are being in a field of market forces. And then we think our individual egotistical yeses are free. So that's the level of the ridiculousness of the situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Something else that came to my mind related to what we were talking about is a few years ago, I had this podcast conversation with John Riveki, in which he talked about the epidemic of autodidacticism, which means like isolated individuals watching YouTube, reading blog posts, and teaching themselves basically. And that deprives us, if you're autodidacts, if you're purely autodidacts, we are deprived of the kinds of meritocracy, the structures that you're talking about, you refer to, Cadell. And we learn from that. It's if I just watch YouTube in the privacy of my own home, I will never get a feedback that I need. If I join a seminar and ask a stupid question, and I realize that, that's extremely helpful. I mean, there are no stupid questions, but I'm talking about a feedback that brings self-awareness and precision to my self-awareness. And not having that, of course, I can allow, as an autodidact, I can allow my ego to be continuously inflated. But then I become vulnerable to these gurus who will come up and capture my desire and my self-image. And so the kind of vulnerability comes with the autodidact, or you can use autodidact as a metaphor, being isolated, going your own way, going our own way in isolation and in relative freedom. I'll end there. Any final words? Happy birthday again, Daniel, and all the best.
The only final word that I will say is that actually the dating problem is actually because it doesn't have a community. It's only a propaganda type thing, which is why it's so funny, because it's like you basically have to advertise yourself. But that loss of community of dating, where it's like there is this communal aspect of like, oh, I think you would like this person that I know, or something like that, right? No dating site actually makes like an actual community type of dating style. It's just solely like you advertise yourself, and then you just approach individuals. So it shows itself the clearest gap ever between you're just communicating with the market and the individual. There's no community whatsoever. And I thought that was so perfect that Cadell said that, because then it goes back to the family. It goes back to this problem of community that we need to address that Daniel was talking about. So, Daniel, thank you. And, I'll say this for all of us, that ontological compliments are way better than epistemological compliments. So we are happy that you exist, Daniel.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'll just say, happy birthday, Daniel. I really appreciated this chance that Davood has opened here to talk about your work. I think this is a really fun exercise. And thank you for everything that you've brought to our community. I remember the first time I Zoom called with you, I could tell right away that there was a level of authenticity and a level of depth to your mind that was very precious, and you are very precious to us. So happy birthday.
Thank you very much, Cadell. Thank you very much, Javier. And I heard that Daniel might not be super comfortable with all the compliments we throw his way, but that's the cost of being in a community. Sometimes you'll be uncomfortable.
And that's the cost of giving us so many compliments.
Right.
That's right.
You're
that's
just
right.
so fantastic, Davood, and Javier, you are wonderful as well. And I just really appreciate everything you're doing with your channel. And Davood, my God, you're just absolutely a genius, Davood. I mean, everything you say is hilarious and wonderful, and you're wonderful, and I'm wonderful, and everything's wonderful.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again. Thank you both, and thank you, Daniel. Till next time.